Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we're going to look at the differences between PSA ratings for Pokemon cards. So today we're going to look at cards ranging from PSA 5 to PSA 10 condition. We're also going to look at the differences between graded English cards, graded old back Japanese cards, and graded new back Japanese cards. Hopefully this video will give you a comprehensive understanding on what PSA looks for when they are grading Pokemon cards. So beginning with PSA 5, this is going to be a low rated item for Pokemon, and you can see right away there's a black dot there on the front, and there's black discoloration on the top left border as well. Also, there's some scratching on the hollow pattern, which you can somewhat see on the Fire Blast attack. PSA will deduct for that scratching, but by and large, for most to all Pokemon cards, the damage is going to be on the back. And if you don't have a picture of the back of the card, you are not going to get a good indication on the true condition. So here you can see there's significant whitening and very strong chipping here on the corner. Also, there's consistent whitening all across the border. You can see how the entire bottom here is white with more significant chipping at certain spots. However, that consistent whitening is going to be the main reason why this card is limited to a PSA 5 rating. If it had this whitening without the front blemishes, it'd probably be more of a PSA 6. However, combining the front flaws with the back, that is why this card is a PSA 5 rating. Moving on to the PSA 6. PSA 6 is going to be an example of, by and large, what most English cards are on eBay ungraded. So in my opinion, this is the average condition for most ungraded English cards on eBay. And you'll see there is an upgrade on the front. So the front looks pretty solid, especially when you have a photo of an ungraded item. The front looks great. And going back to what I said about you need to see a picture of the back of an ungraded card, when you turn this card over, it's a completely different story. It has the consistent whitening there on the top, very similar to the PSA 5, especially here at the bottom. You can see some very strong whitening there on the corner, and it goes along the entire bottom border. Not as strong as the 5, but nonetheless still consistent whitening. That consistent whitening on the back is a sign of usage. It's a sign of play. And by and large, this is what you're going to see mostly on eBay, is an EX to near mint condition item for a card of this age. Moving on to a 7. A 7 is where you really start to see the front pop a bit more. Something to note when you get into the 8 to 9 grades, majority of the 9 to 10 grade range are going to be cards that were never used and or they're pulled directly from a pack. Therefore, the holographic pattern is going to be the most vibrant compared to the lower grade levels. And that's because there will be scratching and or oils that naturally occur from using the card. However, this 7 has a strong front. The main issue is going to be the back. You have a decent amount of whitening. However, it's not consistent in that the entire border is white, as we saw with the 5 and the 6. However, you have multiple examples of whitening or chipping, and those multiple examples are going to be why this card is rendered a 7. And hopefully you can see how this whitening is not as strong as your 5 and 6. Giving you a full scope there. It's not as strong as the 5 and 6, but it's still noticeable. You can see that top one especially. And moving into the 8, so the 8 is where you really start to see strong grades and weak grades. So what I mean by that is this is a great example of a strong 8. And there are cards that sit between grades sometimes. So this card could probably be a borderline 9 or an 8. And why I believe it's a strong 8 is because if you look at the front, the only flaw really is that left centering. You see it's a bit smaller there on the left, still within the 9 parameters. However, when we look at the back, there isn't much whitening. In fact, this card is a pack fresh card. You could see maybe this minor whitening here, very, very microscopic. That's very small. However, this is a great example of a strong 8, weak 9. More specifically, this is a great example of a card you could send into PSA for review, and it would be a good candidate to upgrade to a 9 grading or 9 rating because, again, some cards sit between grades. And I think you'll see this by and large with Pokemon with the current market and the current condition. You'll see it most with probably the PSA 8 to 9 range. And then moving into the 9 category, there's really a lot to discuss with a 9. First of all, there's a reason why PSA made the mint rating 9 instead of 10. So mint means a truly unused, just untouched example of an item or a card. And that is why this is a 9 rating. The 10 rating is a truly gem example of a mint card. So a mint card can still have a minor defect or a minor bit of whitening. And this Charizard is a great example. The front, flawless. You could see right away that holographic pattern is really, really vibrant. You know, even without me moving it, you could see it much more than you could the 5, 6, or 7. And then you go to the back, and there really isn't any whitening except right here at the top. And it's very difficult to capture. Let me get focused in there. So that whitening right there on the top is a textbook example of why especially English cards straight from a pack are not guaranteed a 10. This is a pack fresh Charizard. That whitening is so minimal. It's somewhat it's probably not noticeable for most people from, you know, even right here at this distance, it's not noticeable. But nonetheless, it is there, and this is a great example of a truly mint item that was pulled directly from a pack, but however, it's not a gem example of a mint item because of that minor whitening. So moving into the 10 grade, this is what most people want to see. A 10 item will be truly flawless. This Charmeleon card, this is actually the W gold stamp Charmeleon card. Great example. Strong front, nothing wrong with the front. Move to the back. Absolutely flawless back. And for English collectors, this is just almost fictional. It's so frustratingly difficult to find an English card with absolutely no whitening. And this is a great example of one that has zero whitening, zero flaws. Very, very difficult to find. Very improbable you're going to pull something like this from a pack because this was a promo. But if this were a set card, very improbable that you'll pull a card with that condition from a pack. Great example of a set card. Another one pulled from a pack. We got Voltorb here. Again, front is flawless and back completely flawless as well. However, one distinction I do want to make, especially for English cards, let me see if I can focus it in on here. Sometimes PSA will allow a little dot. See a dot there right in the corner? Very small, and I have to tilt the camera at an angle to really catch it. So it's not going to be considered damage because it's not visible straight on when viewing the back of the card. You know, PSA can tell right away, even for me, you know, if I make an order from someone, I can tell how much the cards were used or how, if they sat in a binder or, you know, if they were pulled from a pack and never touched. And by and large, you know, your gem mint cards are going to have absolutely no flaws. The only possible potential critique that I have in my experience, or that I would see in my experience, would be a microscopic speck like with this Voltorb, which is ultimately negligible because you have to really, really focus on it. You really have to tilt the card and angle it. So if you're having to do all that work just to find a microscopic speck of a card, you probably have a gem mint example. So moving into the Japanese old back cards, the Japanese old back cards are going to be more difficult to grade than the Japanese new backs. However, they are not going to be as difficult as the English old cards of the same age, because the Japanese cards had a better print quality. However, with that said, here's a great example of a card that had, you know, not much whitening, but look at that centering. So by and large, what you're going to look for on Pokemon cards, the biggest deductions are going to be the whitening on the back and the overall centering. So you see how this is off-centered? There's not much whitening, if any. There's a bit there on the bottom corner. But that bit of whitening with the strong off-centering is why this card earned a PSA 8 rating. And moving into 9s, here's an example again of a card that has a centering issue, no whitening on the back, but the centering, there goes my stand. The centering is what will limit this card to a PSA 9 rating. And then moving on to your 10 in Japanese old back, and definitely Japanese new back, is by and large going to be a truly flawless gem mint copy. You can see right away, look at that hollow pattern just staring right back at you. Never used. I personally pulled this from a pack myself. Just completely flawless on the front. No blemishes. You know, the hollow is just as vibrant as it can be. And then the back, perfect as well. No whitening. So moving into new back, this is going to be the last category for Pokemon cards. And what I mean by new back is, if you look at the back here, this is the new back design, where if you compare it to this is the Japanese old back, they stopped doing this design around 2001 and transitioned to this new back design around 2002. By and large, the Japanese old back is going to be more difficult to earn a high grade because, again, the blue border is going to show whitening more, where this new back design, not only is it newer, but it also hides whitening. So if you do have whitening or chipping, there is potential for it not to be visible when graded, and therefore it's easier to obtain a higher graded card, coupled with the fact that Japanese cards have a better print than English. However, here's a great example of an absolutely flawless card in relation to whitening, usage, etc. It was never used, pulled from a pack again, no whitening whatsoever. However, it's a PSA 9 rating because of that centering. Look at that, that top border right there, very thin. And then you got your thick right and bottom border. Absolutely flawless card outside of that off centering. Therefore, this card will be stuck at a 9 permanently because that centering will keep it at the 9 rating. And then one example of a PSA 10 new back card, by and large, majority of your cards that you pull from a new Japanese pack are going to be PSA 9 to 10 condition. Again, the main issue for new back Japanese is going to be centering, probably not whitening. Here's just a quick example of a gem mint item from a new back card. You can see no whitening, no blemishes whatsoever. And then lastly, I will show you an ungraded. This is an ungraded new back card that does have whitening, so you can get an understanding on what whitening looks like for new back Japanese. So if we turn this over, this card actually has some decent whitening, probably an EX to near mint, because the front is solid, but the back has whitening, similar to that Charizard I showed you earlier. And you can see that whitening stands out because this is probably a card that was played in a deck at some point. There's clearly usage, but nonetheless, this is an example of a more used or played item where I think if this card were used to the same extent in English or even old back Japanese, the damage would be more apparent. So there you have it. That is a range from PSA 5 to PSA 10 condition for Pokemon cards. And again, keep in mind right now the current high grade range is somewhere between 8 to 10. I think 7 will start to be a higher grade range for the older sets. It already is for the base set Charizard. I think base set goes down to about 4 for Charizard, and definitely 7 for a lot of the holographic cards. So by and large, 8 to 10 is going to be your range. And again, most cards are going to be in EX near mint condition, ungraded on eBay. It's very difficult to find truly mint cards ungraded on eBay at this point, and moving forward, it's only going to be more difficult. In my experience, I think for base set and older cards, especially Charizard, it's even difficult right now to find a truly near mint to mint example. So there you have it. If you have any questions, suggestions, let me know. Till next time.